It says,
all right, guys, we are live. Holy cow, we got it working. I think we are. Let me double check and make sure. Hi, guys. I'm Dani Williamson with Integrative Family Medicine, and this is Palmer. Oh, we are live. All right, Kippola.
You got it.
Kippola. And here we are. We are live, and we are talking Beat Autoimmune tonight. I am so excited. Uh-oh, I got it on here. As soon as you guys get logged on, hit your heart buttons, hit your like buttons. You can hit share. Okay. You can share it with your friends, hit your heart buttons, hit your like buttons. Tell us where you're from. We are talking all things autoimmune tonight. And one of my best friends from high school is on here. Hello, Kim. All right, guys, people are logging on like crazy. It's popping up here. So I'm so excited. Let me put Palmer's name up here. There we go, guys. All right, listen. Palmer and I met last year at the JJ Virgin Mindshare Summit out in Rancho Bernardo, California. And immediately we connected, didn't we?
Absolutely.
We both were first-time attendees there. And this is a big deal. Now, this Mindshare, you are there with the top of the top of the top, right? Mark Hyman, JJ Virgin, Asprey, Bulletproof Coffee. I mean, they're all there, right? And so here we were, first timers, and there was a whole bunch of first timers, and we immediately connected. And I thought, I'm going to love this gal from the beginning. But let me tell you about this woman. I am so excited. And those of you that know me know, as soon as this book came out, I was promoting it like crazy. I've been waiting. So she stepped out of the corporate world for 26 years in it, just like I was 20 years in fashion. And she has become an advocate for autoimmune conditions. I say conditions too. I don't say disease because that just sounds bad, right? She's a speaker. She's an author. She's a functional medicine certified health coach. She specializes in helping people reverse and prevent autoimmune conditions because prevention is key, right? She developed a framework, which I'm so excited tonight we're going to talk about, called FIGHTS. It helps others beat autoimmune conditions based on her own 26-year battle with multiple sclerosis. And this is going to be great tonight listening to her. This book, Beat Autoimmune, which was just released last month, right?
Actually, April 30th. So yes, just last
month. April 30th. And I have already read the thing. It's amazing. Beat Autoimmune, the 6 keys to reverse your condition and reclaim your health. And by the way, the foreword was written by Dr. Mark Hyman, which I'm impressed with that. Kudos to that. What was I going to say? Okay. She shares the science, the stories, the healing journeys, all of these things. I don't know if you can see that or not, and strategies to help people heal. I'm thrilled to death. She's done coursework with the not integrative family medicine. That's my office with the functional integrative functional medicine, IFM, the Institute for Functional Medicine, Heart Math Institute, the Functional Medicine Coaching Academy. And she has studied under leading experts in the field, right? Holistic health, energy, functional medicine, all the things. And I didn't know this. You founded Transcend Autoimmune, which is a big community, like it's growing rapidly because just like autoimmune disease is, right? Of people proactively seeking to reverse or prevent autoimmune conditions naturally. She speaks my love language. She had multiple sclerosis, me with lupus, and then I treat mainly Hashimoto's patients in my office. So Palmer, welcome.
Oh my goodness.
Service, guys. Show her some love, please.
Oh.
She is out in the Bay Area. What time is it there? 5 o'clock?
It's about 5 o'clock.
And we're competing with Game of Thrones. I don't know what time Game of Thrones comes on. I've never seen one. I've seen zero episodes of it, but I'm aware. And all of you guys that are on, hello guys. I am thrilled to death that you're watching tonight. So, and if you're not, you can also watch this archive. But let's get right into business because we don't have all night long, right? You were diagnosed at 19.
Yes.
What happened?
Let's go back. I was a happy, healthy, well-adjusted 19-year-old girl. I had just finished my freshman year of college. I went home to California for the summer. And I was living with my parents and I was working a summer job as a hostess in a local restaurant. And one morning I woke up and the soles of my feet were all tingling, that pins and needles feeling like you've slept on a limb too long and then the blood comes back and it's all tingling. Only
That's right.
this morning, no blood came flowing back. And I thought, well, that'll go away. I'll just go to my job. So off I went. And over the course of the morning, the tingling just crept right up my calves and it felt just really super creepy. And by the time it got to my knees, I knew something was really wrong. So I called my parents, who called the family doctor, who said, get her to the neurologist at UCLA this afternoon.
Right.
So that's what we did. We all went to the neurologist's office. And by the time we sat in the neurologist's office, the tingling had reached my chest. Really, really, really unsettling feeling. The neurologist had me walk heel toe across the floor, had me do the fingers to the nose with the eyes closed, and tested my reflexes, and literally a 5 or 6 minute exam, at the end of which she pronounces, I'm 99% certain that you have multiple sclerosis, MS. And if I'm right, there's nothing you can do except take medication and prepare for life in a wheelchair.
Yep, that's right.
That was that. We had never heard of multiple sclerosis. And for your watchers, this is before the internet. So there was no Terry Walls. There was no guidebook on what to do. And we left her office with very little information, very little hope, got home. And by the time we got home that evening, the tingling had reached my chest. And by the time we went to sleep that night, my mom crawled into bed with me and she was holding me and crying. And I'm crying harder, Dani, because by this time, every part of my body that had been tingling from my neck down had gone completely numb. And my body would stay completely numb for a full 6 weeks.
Oh, my goodness.
It was an absolutely terrifying time.
Whoa. Oh, absolutely. Holy cow. Okay. So then, so I know. So I was reading this book, and this is interesting because I treat root causes, right? That's what I tell people every day. You weren't born with multiple sclerosis, right? I wasn't born with lupus. These patients weren't born with Hashimoto's or heartburn or something, or diabetes or migraine headaches. We turn those on, right? Many times I don't know what the tipping point is, but there was a section in your book where this girl says to you, and I can't remember who it was. She asked you when you were laying on the couch, she said, why do you think you got MS? Is that what she said?
That was it. That is the crux.
So you call it like the big gift in there.
Yeah. Yes. So that I did not view that as a gift at the time, right? Somebody's asking you, you're lying on the couch, and I basically relegated to the couch during this period of time. It was 1984 and the Summer Olympics were on. So thankfully there was a happy distraction.
Yes.
And friends came that weren't too scared off by this and brought the usual cookies and books and things like that, right? But this one family friend into things metaphysical just came right out with it and said, Palmer, why do you think you got the MS? And I was just offended. I was like, what do you mean? Why do I think I got the MS? You think I brought this on? And she left and I just couldn't let go of the question.
Right.
Chewed on that like a dog with a bone, Dani. I couldn't let it go. So it came to me as a flash of insight in an instant. And I have to take you back a little bit farther in time because I was adopted as a baby by very loving parents at age 3 days old. But my dad had been a fighter pilot and his way was invariably the right way. And so he and I butted heads quite a bit. And he was very opinionated and yelled a lot. And he used to yell at my mom. He didn't like that she was heavy. And literally my earliest memory is my dad is yelling at my mom, and I may be age 3 or 4. She's locked herself in a room and she's crying, the bedroom. And he's yelling and calling her names. And I'm standing up to my dad with my little dukes up. You call my mom names and I'll sock your lights out.
Oh.
So I, in that instant, that flash of insight on the couch when I was 19, I believed I was a hyper defensive child. I'd become a little child warrior. And somehow or other, I intuited that my immune system was a proxy for that hyper defensiveness, right?
You bet.
That first impression that chronic stress was the reason for the MS was the first thing that came to my mind. And I still believe that's a huge part of it, even though I know there's more to the story.
There's more to it, but we had that whole conversation about ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, and we have that Sunday night service on it when the bear never leaves, right? And you never get a chance for that cortisol to go down and go down. And that bear's always there, whether it's in the house. I know. Wow. Okay.
So that was the setup from what I believed to be the case in terms of my big why.
Okay.
I'm also very fortunate that by the end of the summer, so 6 weeks, in the nick of time for me to go back to my sophomore year, the numbness retreated enough for me to get back on an airplane and go back to school. So that's what I did. And then that was the beginning of my 26-year journey of relapsing, remitting MS. So
for people who don't know what relaxing, remitting is, let them know what you went through with that.
So there are different types of MS that are, I guess, diagnosed based on the severity of symptoms and whether they come and go or whether they get progressively worse.
Right.
So the type that I had is the most common. I think 80% of people with MS have the type that comes and goes, and it typically doesn't leave you much the worse for wear. I did have an excruciating bout of optic neuritis, which left my color slightly different in one eye, and it took a couple of visits to an emergency room for the pain to get diagnosed with that. And it left my eye nerve damaged. But apart from that, the damage wasn't lasting. Does that make sense?
Makes perfect sense.
So over the course of those 26 years, just to abbreviate this part, I saw a half a dozen neurologists at leading institutions, each of whom repeated the refrain, there's absolutely nothing you can do except take medication.
Yep.
And on the other hand, and I didn't mention this earlier, my dad, the fighter pilot, my very first sentence was, I can do it. That was my very first sentence, I can do it. And my dad was right there behind me, honey, you can do anything you want to, you can do it. And when I was lying on that couch, feeling that numbness of not feeling, my dad would tell me, honey, you can beat this thing. You can beat this thing. I know you can beat this thing. And I'm getting a little bit of chills because that's why I call the book Beat Autoimmune. So he was really encouraging my can-do spirit. And I figured, well, I got to figure it out. There's no guidebooks, there's no internet, but somehow or other, I'm going to figure this thing out. So I did multiple experiments over the years, all of them informal, nothing formal in terms of experimentation. But I did 4 experiments that maybe folks want to hear about as an abbreviation for what those were before I found my Eureka experiment.
Yes.
So since chronic stress was what I thought was at the root of the MS, it just made perfect sense to me. I needed to learn how to relax. I was always on. I mean, I could catch knives out of the air with, I even had periods of insomnia as a child because I just had to make sure everything and everyone my mom was okay. And I knew.
How many of us can relate to that, right?
It's widespread. So I needed to learn how to relax. And so the first thing I did is I signed up for a yoga class once I could go do yoga.
Good.
And boy, did I learn how to breathe. And I loved letting it go and just leaving it on the mat. And then in the early 90s, I started meditating. And what I found was I noticed that when I was stressed out, like exams at school or conflict at home or later in the workforce, I would feel an exacerbation, Dani, almost immediately. Like I could tell cause and effect so fast. With stress, you get more symptoms. And conversely, when I relaxed, when I did the deep breathing, when I did the yoga practices, it didn't matter what the practice was as long as I did it.
That's right.
I had less symptoms. So that was very clear. And that was an outstanding experiment.
Stress will kill you. I tell people that every day.
It does.
My 6 steps to healing: reduce stress.
Yes.
You have to.
Yes. So the 4 experiments, one was extremely helpful. That was the stress reduction. It continues to be.
Right.
2 were not helpful at all, but I'll briefly cover those. And 1 was fantastic. So the 2 that weren't helpful, again, no guidebooks on what to eat, but I figured something, what I ate must have something to do with the MS. So I went to the library and found the Swank diet book, which said that the best diet for MS is low-fat vegetarian. Well, I already told you my mom was heavy, so she was fat phobic. We had tubs of margarine in our house. We had non-fat milk. We had iced milk ice cream. So I couldn't go any lower fat than I was. But what I did is I added more healthy whole grains of beans and more grain.
Right.
I took out the meat, fish, chicken, and I didn't notice any symptom reduction. What I did notice is an additional set of symptoms in my tummy. I really started noticing grumbling and rumbling in my tummy.
Yep.
So I had some tummy, like I could feel something going on in my tummy almost every time after eating, but I didn't think anything of it. I thought that was normal. When I went low-fat vegetarian, things got worse. Third experiment that did not work at all for me was medication. So I resisted as long as possible taking meds. I intuited that they might lead to worse things. So I didn't take medications for the longest time until an especially persistent neurologist at Stanford insisted that the only way that I could stay out of a wheelchair and not have a shortened lifespan was to take one of these injectable medications. So, I mean, my husband and I were in his office and it was like forced choice clothes. Here are 3 meds, pick one, you're going on it. And we thought, okay. So for 4 years, I injected myself with this medication every night. And the only thing that I want to comment about it is that it didn't make any difference in the course of the MS, which continued to go back and forth like this.
Right.
But I did develop an additional 3 strikes, including lipoatrophy in every part of the body that I injected myself in these rotating positions.
Her fat was sucking in, like making dents in your body, right?
Very, yes, not bikini ready diet.
Yeah, like big divots.
Big
in your skin. That's right.
Yeah. So the second 2 were more worrisome. I injected myself on my hip and a wound developed that didn't heal for 6 months. So I had to go to a wound care clinic for 6 months for that to heal. And the third and final strike was one night, 10 minutes after injecting myself, I experienced symptoms of a heart attack. And Dani, the medication nurse had forewarned me that this might happen, but when you're in the middle of like cold, clammy, and you think you're going to die, that was, very little comfort in that. So I figured that I was doing fine with my stress reduction, that I would just quit the medication cold turkey. So that's what I did. And fortunately, the best.
As healthcare providers, we generally recommend that no one ever cold turkey quits anything.
Yeah. There you go. All right.
Oh, my Lord.
I can't
tell like 90% of my patients.
Yeah. So I'm only speaking about what I did. I'm not
I know.
For anybody. So that's my experience of that. But the fourth experiment, since I knew by 2010 that what my tummy was feeling must have something to do with what I'm eating, it was time for me to go see a nutritionist. So lo and behold, yes, imagine if it took me a little bit, but I finally found.
I pooped my brains out for 24 years, 5 gastroenterologists, 4 colonoscopies before a doctor ever looked at me and said, Dani, what are you eating? Do you know your diet controls your pooping? I mean, what?
Seriously, that
4 years.
Right.
Just never said.
Right.
It took a family practice doctor to say that to me. Okay.
Unbelievable. Well, we are kindred spirits. Seriously,
yes,
our experiences are so similar. But if you take your pet to the vet, what's the first thing they ask? What are you feeding him?
Oh, yeah.
Right. So, all right. So I go to this functional medicine nutritionist, run some tests, and lo and behold, it comes back I have non-celiac gluten sensitivity.
Right.
So that means I don't have celiac disease, but I may be like 30% of the population with this more insidious, because you don't know about it.
That's exactly right.
Sensitivity to gluten. And she told me what it was doing to my gut. She guided me on this whole protocol of healing my gut for a month, had me remove it. Within 1 week of removing that gluten, I stopped having any and all tummy trouble.
Isn't that something?
After eating, just fine, no problem.
Yep.
Within 1 month, Dani, not a single MS symptom ever again, period, final, end of story. So, this is perplexing to me. And I am really quick to say to people, I am not saying that you can cure an autoimmune condition based on just removing gluten.
That's right. And we can't say that.
And nor would I ever say that. And this is why it's multifactorial, right? So that's why I came up with FIGHTS, which is food, infections, gut health, hormone balance, toxins, and stress. You got to look at all of it. If I hadn't been doing the stress reduction for 26 years leading up to this, and I hadn't healed the lining of my gut and become more conscious of what I was putting down my throat,
that's right,
I might not have had that experience. So that's what I wanted to say about that.
It's something.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And to be honest, and I just want to close on this, that in January of 2011, I went back to that neurologist who said, there's nothing you can do except take the medication.
That's right.
Remove the gluten. I was so excited to go back to his office and say, look, doc, I don't feel like I'm plugged into a wall socket anymore. I don't feel like my legs are lead when I wake up in the morning. I don't have that constriction of rubber bands around my neck or this or that or the other symptom. Isn't that amazing? And he just kind of in this condescending manner pats me on the head a bit and says, Palmer, gluten sensitivity is a fad.
Yep.
It's just a fad. So I went on my merry way, never saw him again, but I want to just bring us to present moment for a second and say, I decided to go back last year for a follow-up MRI because I thought it would be really important 8 years later. Let's see how I'm doing and whether this is real or, what.
Okay.
I walk into his office and the first thing he says to me is, Palmer, I want you to know that gluten sensitivity is real. We finally know this. I'm not kidding you. This is a conventionally trained neurologist. We know that gluten sensitivity is real. And I bet 30% of my MS patients are sensitive to gluten. Right there.
Bingo. So but what's he doing about it? What's he doing about it? Is he telling them? Is he testing them? Is he? Who knows?
So here's what I suggested to him. I said, I'm now a functional medicine certified health coach. And he said, I know I can't give you my patient list. And I said, I'm not asking for your patient list. Wouldn't it be awesome to collaborate maybe with 1 or 2 or 3 people where we do a 1 + 1 = 3 kind of thing? I don't tell them to stop their medication. I just coach them on lifestyle things. And together we have better outcomes. I knew he would be retiring soon. I never heard from him. I tried 3 times and he never reached out. But my point of saying this is it takes time for doctors and scientists to catch up with some things that we know. I mean, they're extreme.
Well, the research says we're practicing 20 years behind. 20 years behind. That's what the research says. Your healthcare provider is practicing 20 years behind what the research actually shows.
Yeah.
That was in the Annals of Internal Medicine. I can't remember what year, but anyway, 20 years behind. I was taught 20 years behind. It takes like 13 or 17 years when something is proven science to actually make it to mainstream medicine as well. So unless they are sitting around on PubMed and reading the latest research like functional medicine providers are, they have no idea. And they can be to blame for it. I mean, I used to tell people, you can't blame them. They weren't taught. Well, you know what? That's bullshit. I wasn't taught. But you step out of the box and you learn that there's a better way to treat these patients, that nobody's getting better. We are just treating symptoms. We are not treating root causes. And so I have zero tolerance for people who say there's no research on it. That's not true, because everything that I do in my practice and what you do as well is soundly evidence-based.
So here's what I'll just add to that, because I could have said that myself.
Sorry, I just
This is beautiful, because now that they know that gluten sensitivity is real and he's continuing to not share that with his patients, that's, in my view, like almost worse, because it's negligent or
it's malpractice is what it is. Okay. I mean, I'm sorry, it is. When you withhold information from a patient that could get them well, that's malpractice.
Change their life.
You bet.
So,
okay, so we got off target there. I have a whole list of questions I've written out here, and that we just went down a rabbit trail. But I'm telling you, it infuriates me, and it infuriates me, because I went through the same thing with lots of specialists who said, I mean, that's the rheumatologist that I dealt with said, Dani, and she was the best there was. My OBGYN sent me to her. She walks in and she says, there's no cure for lupus. It kills people every year. Here's your pain medicine. Here's your anti-inflammatories. But Dani, these will destroy your kidneys and your liver. I remember this as clear as anything. I was selling breast pumps and nipple cream, owning a maternity store in Paducah, Kentucky. I didn't know anything about functional medicine. And I thought, well, that sounds like a bunch of crap. I don't want my kidneys and liver to die. And I don't want to die. So what the heck? So my OBGYN says, well, there's here. So I went somewhere else. I didn't care for that lady who was the best there was.
Right.
And the other guy said the same thing. And I still use him here in Nashville, but he was a lot nicer about it, you know, and he was open. And I didn't know anything about diet. I was still eating Betty Crocker canned icing out of the can, right? And just like chocolate. And I never changed my diet. I didn't know anything about that. But yeah. So I know what it's like to be told there's no cure. Here we go. So you cured your incurable multiple sclerosis.
That's right. That's right. So the question is,
how can you reverse it?
Possible?
How's that possible?
How is that even possible, right?
Do that.
Right. It's not even possible. So just a snapshot, the before and after. Before, for 26 years, symptoms consistent with MS, as evidenced by physical exam, by symptoms I had, by multiple MRIs. And then from November of 2010 through today, I'm health consistent with vibrancy. I mean, never felt better, had more energy, not a single MS symptom ever since. I've been back to neurologist's office. I pass all their tests in the exam room.
Brain scans, everything.
The brain scan that I had with the doctor we call Mr. Happy.
And that's not a good, that we don't mean good things by that, no, Mr. Happy.
Sorry. I don't mean to be mean. He'll never watch this. So he sat me down when I got the MRI back and he showed me the before and after. And he said, this is where we can see evidence of MS now.
Okay.
But the lesions have faded or have disappeared and there's no new lesions. And he said, Palmer, this just simply couldn't be a better story.
Wow.
So I'm telling you.
So here's the thing, and I know we got things to do, but there's a big word that's huge in my head. And last year when I went to Scotland for the low dose naltrexone conference, and it was an amazing conference, and this old doctor, crotchety old Scottish guy comes hobbling up there like with a cane, and he said, every single one of you here are curious. He said, that's the reason you're learning about low dose naltrexone. He said, my colleagues are never curious about why my patients get well.
Yeah.
He said, curiosity is what you have to have in healthcare. Your neurologist is not curious. My rheumatologist is not curious. Very few providers are curious, right? And you have to be curious in order to help people.
That's right.
In order to take it to the next level, you've got to be curious about why.
Well, so both for the practitioner and for I don't say patient, I say for the person.
Okay.
Because at the end of the day, my clients, your patients are people. We have to take our health into our own hands. I mean, we've just been talking about all of these practitioners not being up to speed on the latest science. They're 20 years behind.
Yes.
So, I'm just a normal person. I'm a woman who had a full-time job and I just couldn't put the two things together in my head. No, there's nothing you can do. And yet I found that there was everything I could do. So that's what drove my insatiable curiosity to figure out, well, how is this even possible? And I dove right in and found super exciting science that I think people need to know about. So
tell us how you went from that to to finding the science to writing a book that is going to help. I mean, it potentially could help millions of people if we could get millions of people to buy this book.
So I did not set out to write a book. I was simply excited about learning about this for myself because I really, first of all, I don't deal with bullies very well. When, in my experience growing up with my dad, I felt like he bullied me and my mom. So that didn't go well. Plus, it just was this cognitive dissonance between what I experienced and what I was told by all these experts. Plus, I had a little bit of this righteous indignation that fueled me. So that just drove me to look at PubMed, Dani, as you just mentioned, this endless biomedical research papers that you could look at. And I wanted to know, what are these environmental factors that we can control?
That's
well,
right.
One of the first things that I learned about is this empowering new science of epigenetics.
You bet.
I'm sure you know all about. And if you don't, you really need to learn about this, because it just busts through the myths that our DNA is our destiny, that whatever your parents had or grandparents had, that you'll get the same thing too. But it turns out it's not that our genes just express themselves in some sort of pre-programmed kind of way. They are simply taking direction from our environment. So whatever our personal environment is, what we eat, drink, think, and do matters greatly. And it turned out that I had changed the expression of my MS epigenetically.
Yes.
So I'll always have the genes for the MS.
That's right.
Not saying that I don't have the genes for it. What I'm saying is those genes don't need to be expressed.
That's
Once
right.
you learn, you detect, you remove, and you repair your gut. Once you do that, we have the opportunity to stop and reverse the autoimmune expression.
That's right. Well, it's just like, I don't know who said it, but your genetics is the gun. Your environment pulls the trigger.
That's
so
right.
You have to change the environment, right?
That's right. You absolutely must.
Again, you weren't born with MS.
No.
And what you turn on,
right,
your body can turn off. I'm living proof of it, and so are you.
Absolutely. And that's the hope. And I think this goes to the mindset that we have to have the mindset that this is possible.
That's exactly right.
We'll get into that. But the second piece of exciting science I found is that there's actually an autoimmune equation. So for years and years, scientists knew that genes play a part of it. So genes are part of the autoimmune equation. And lifestyle factors, these mysterious lifestyle factors, are a big part of it. But they didn't understand how those two things interacted. And in the early part of this century, Dr. Alessio Fasano and his team, who are now at Mass Gen, part of Harvard Medical School, discovered the third element in the equation that's necessary for autoimmune conditions to develop, and that is intestinal hyperpermeability, also known as a leaky gut.
That's right.
So there we have it. And what makes that equation so exciting is that when you flip the equation, you can reverse the condition.
Yes.
So I didn't know that that's what I had done. I had detected my triggers, which were the gluten. Eventually, I found out dairy was in there too.
Oh, me too. Dairy's. Oh,
right. That had to go too. I've added it back in since and never had MS symptoms again. So I know I've been able to pinpoint it down more specifically to the gluten, but healed the gut, dealt with the chronic stress. That's the autoimmune equation: detect, remove, repair. And that was the second hugely empowering piece of science I learned. And the third thing I'll mention about science is I was intently curious, and maybe because I was adopted, I wanted to know, what part do genes play versus what does your environment play, right? Nature. So I really was curious, and I found a report from the CDC in 2014 that says that our genes are only responsible for up to 10% of our disease risk.
That's right.
And 90% is our lifestyle.
Yes.
Right?
That's right.
It's huge.
So and there's no excuse. So those of you that are listening, there's no excuse. So don't you dare come in and tell your provider, well, my mom has diabetes.
That's right.
My dad had a stroke. My dad has high blood pressure. My brother has high cholesterol. That is bull. You do not have to have it. And if you do, you can reverse it.
That's right.
Sorry. Yes.
That's perfect. And there's even more recent research, I think, in the cancer area that shows that 5% is genetic and 95% is lifestyle. So the onus is on us, which makes it exciting and kind of scary because you need to know what to do. And that's where I started. I figured at this point, this stuff should have made front page news. Don't you think?
That's right.
This is so exciting and empowering. And why isn't this front page news? So now I'm in this mode of, okay, I want to help people figure out what are those mysterious root cause categories, because I want them to have at their fingertips what they need to do to heal, speed healing, if you will. So I wrote down this checklist. I had my little checklist of all of the root causes. And by this time, I felt confident enough to start meeting with people. So I met with functional medicine doctors and autoimmune experts. And then I cold called Dr. Aristo Vojdani, one of the leading immunologists that we have. And he's the scientific advisor to Cyrix Laboratories, which is an autoimmune focused lab.
Yep.
And I would march in and I would show people my root cause reversal checklist and say, poke holes in this. I want to learn the truth about autoimmune conditions. What can you add? What can you take away? And I sat down with Dani. I handed him this list and he said, Palmer, that's a book and those are your chapters. So I had not been planning on writing a book. He gave me the first inkling that this might be a good thing to consider doing, but I wanted to really help people come up with a way of remembering those root cause categories they could control. Mm-hmm. And those were food, infections, gut health, hormone balance, toxins, and stress. And what does that spell? It spells fights.
Right.
And even though I joke and say that I wish it had spelled peace, but given my child warrior status and the relationship with my dad, it spelled fights. So it turns out it not only represents all the root cause categories that we can control, right?
Yes.
It's easy to remember, so people can keep that in mind. And it happens to be metaphorically perfect because we are beating this autoimmune disorder.
That's exactly right.
And it turns out when you dig into each category, you're actually finding the solution within. So you flip it to heal it, right? Because food can be toxic and food can be nourishing and so forth down the line. So, people.
Well, I have hanging on my wall the redneck thing that I say every day, which you just said, is what goes down the pie hole will either heal you or kill you. It's as simple as that. And I say it all the time. And the girls gave it to me for Christmas 2 years ago because it's a fact, right? Yeah. Food can heal you. Food will kill you.
That's right.
What's at the end of your fork is way more powerful than what's at the bottom of your prescription bottle.
Absolutely. Oh, this is perfect. And so people ask me, well, Palmer, do you have to do all of these categories? Do you have to dig into all of them? And the answer is probably need to look at most of them, if not all of them. And there's that saying, you can't supplement your way out of a bad diet.
That's right.
Well, I add to that you can't exercise your way out of emotional trauma. And you can't heal your gut when you're crazy stressed. So they're all interconnected, right?
I bet they are.
They all affect each other. And that's why hormones is last in the book, because it's downstream from everything else.
Yes.
But yes, chances are pretty good you need to look at all of them. And in the book, I include assessments. So you can actually answer a bunch of questions. And if you're clean and clear on toxins, well, that might not be your big chapter. But if you had... if you're aware that when we're talking about adverse childhood experiences and you can resonate with that and you realize, I still view my dad as a tiger or whatever your trigger is, then there's still work to be done. And maybe stress is the chapter that you really want to focus on.
Yep. I love your questionnaires in here and your symptom checklist and all. On the Healing Foods Toolkit there, I scored an 8, which says food is likely a trigger for you if you have autoimmune issues and you want to prevent them. Yeah. Daggone it.
But that's pretty good, Dani. An 8 is
it?
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Okay.
Yeah.
I took all those tests and so, I'm okay. Okay. So we talked a little bit about the science.
Yeah, we talked about the science, and now we can dig into any one of these categories that you want to. We probably don't have time to dig into all of them.
No.
But to a person that I interviewed for the book, so just so people understand the frame of the book, Fights is now the core chapters of the book. So I start with my story, I share the exciting science, and then each chapter is food, infections, gut health, hormone, etc.
That's right.
But I share stories, healing journeys, not just my own. I really wanted to share the good news that so many people have reversed these seemingly incurable autoimmune conditions. And I just didn't want to be a little N of one. So Terry Walls is in there, Jill Carnahan is in there, Mark Hyman is in there, Jacob Teitelbaum, Michelle Corey. There's a great group of people who have all dealt with these inflammatory autoimmune conditions and healed.
That's exactly right.
And they're going on now to serve thousands of other people. And so it becomes an exponential good news story. And that's really what we wanted to create about it.
I loved reading everybody's stories. I actually knew everybody's story, except Jill Carnahan's. I didn't know her story. And so I had just met her. She's big buddies with a friend of mine here in Nashville, Marnie Reeser, and she set us up at Mindshare last year. So I got to meet Jill there, and her story, I didn't know her story. So yeah, that was great. But no, I love the fact you added that into the book.
Yeah. So there's science.
Because we're all struggling. So here's the thing. Some of the greatest healthcare providers, clinicians, coaches, what have you, are the wounded warrior, right? I mean, we've had our problems. We've had our issues. That's the reason we got into what we got into.
Right.
And I think the wounded warrior, the wounded healer is many times the best healer, because we are proof that you can reverse whatever it is going on with you most of the time.
That's right. And I think there's a passion behind it too.
You bet.
I'm simply not satisfied to let people be told by experts that there's nothing they can do. I mean, I will stay just on guard for this and help as many people as I can. And I thought writing a book might be a good way to do that. So that was the plan with that.
So my patients and my tribe and my following, those and my people probably want to hear a lot about gut.
Yeah.
Because guts are what we talk about all the time. If we're going to pick a few things out of, your fights.
Yes.
Thing here. And you cut gluten out, but then did you go to any specific, did you go to a Mediterranean diet or a keto diet? What did you do?
I really went on a paleo template diet. I took out grains, gluten, and dairy, sugar. So all of the above, grains, sugar, dairy. That was, the baseline of what I took out. And I did go low carb and found that extremely helpful. So still flirt with ketosis, and I would call it kind of a modified paleo, keto, intermittent fasting kind of program.
Right.
To work for me. But to a person that I interviewed for the book and all the practitioners who themselves healed, every person said, start with food, because you heal 60 to 80% of the way, and sometimes 100%. I've had clients with MS that removed some of these inflammatory foods and have never had a single symptom again. And then they felt better, or even if they didn't feel 100% better, they felt well enough to start digging into the other categories. So whether and I also want to be really clear that we're not just talking about MS here, because all autoimmune conditions, and there may be 150, they all happen the exact same way. So I don't care if it's lupus or Hashimoto's or what it is, you're talking about the gut. That's the starting point for all of it. And so whatever weak link you have, yours might be lupus and Hashimoto's, mine might be MS and God knows what else, and other people's or something else. But the gut is the mediator for how the autoimmune cascade happens. So we can talk specifically about that. And the reason food is such a big deal is that we're doing it 3 or more times a day.
That's right.
And we're constantly putting it in that gullet, right?
Yes.
And it's either inflammatory or it's nourishing, and it might be different. So some people can handle eggs and some people can't.
That's right.
So that's where experimenting with your own food becomes paramount in doing an elimination phase that I call a 30-day food vacation. I try to put a positive spin on it, but it really is the best. It's the most empowering experiment that I ever did, was to just experiment with food. But right and soon thereafter, you got to dig into the gut. So I know you talk a lot about this, so cut me off whenever you feel like you already know about this, but we do treat our guts like garbage disposals. We are pouring stuff into our gut that is harming, inflaming, and so forth. And I think it's helpful for people, if you don't understand that your gut, which we mean the large and small intestine, by the way, when we're talking health or disease, that's really what we're talking about, the colon and the small intestine. It is the center of your microbiome, which is housed in the colon. It is the center of your immune system, which is housed in our small intestine mostly. So 75% of our immune system right there in the lining of our gut, on the front line of this barrier between what's outside of us, through the tube, and the inside of us into our bloodstream. When we're eating things or taking medications that are inflammatory or chronic stress creates a leaky gut.
You bet it does.
Intestinal permeability, we're supposed to have selectively strategic holes where foods can get absorbed and nutrients go in. But when you start to get tears in what I've heard of called the fishing net, you get rips in the fishing net.
That's right.
Big protein molecules get through the lining of the gut into the bloodstream. They get tagged by your immune system. And all of a sudden, you've got your immune system on that gluten or that egg white or that almond particle, whatever it is for you, right?
Right.
And in this crazy kind of ironic twist of I don't know what, that gluten molecule at a molecular level happens to resemble your thyroid tissue.
Yes.
Or in the case of MS, your myelin sheath. I've also heard that it resembles the cerebellum in your brain. And this is why gluten ataxia, when we start attacking the gluten, it actually can start attacking our brain as well, because our brain looks like that gluten particle. I don't know how in the world that was created, but it just happens to be that way. So that is one of the biggest mechanisms of action for how autoimmune conditions develop. And if we continue to eat those foods that are causing our immune system to overreact to, we will continue to create these soldiers, those antibodies, those autoantibodies that end up harming ourselves. And that's the autoimmune response. It's not our body is just attacking itself willy-nilly. It's attacking something it thinks is a foreign invader. And that's because something has penetrated the gut lining that shouldn't be there.
That's exactly right.
We need to do anything we can to stop that from happening. And the best way to do that is identify what's causing your gut to become leaky and porous, remove it, and then we can heal our guts.
That's exactly right. That's the first thing I do with my patients is I start them off on, which is so ironic that you and I met through JJ Virgin, is for 10 years, I've started them off on the elimination diet, gluten, dairy, soy, corn, sugar, eggs, peanuts, cutting those 7 things out. Before JJ Virgin wrote the Virgin Diet, I just had all these sheets of paper that were stapled together. That was an elimination. Then she wrote the Virgin Diet, and it was like, well, holy cow, here it is. Everything. I was like, why didn't I write this book? Because this is what we've been doing for 3 years prior to that. I had at Dr. Kalb's, and it's the key. If you don't start there, you will forever be behind the 8 ball. But it's the hardest thing to change, Palmer. The diet is the hardest thing to change, because we can do without alcohol. You can do without smoking. You don't have to smoke weed. You don't have to do drugs. You don't have to do all these things, but you have to eat. You have to eat.
Yeah.
And it's the hardest thing to change. We are so emotionally connected to food. You know that. Everything we do revolves around a meal.
That's right.
And when I ask people in the South to cut out gluten, dairy, soy, corn, sugar, eggs, peanuts, the very first thing they do is say, whoa, what? We go to Cracker Barrel twice a week. I'm like, what? You can still go to Cracker Barrel, but you're going to need to not eat the gluten, the biscuits and gravy, and the pancakes and the mama's French toast or whatever they have there, Yeah.
What do I eat, Dani?
I know. What do I eat? I like you eat all the lean meats, nuts, seeds, fruits, and vegetables your body can stand. Your one ingredient, non-fake, processed, bagged, canned, trucked in, man-made, packaged food. Right? This is how I rattle this off every day. And I have 3 patients tomorrow that I'm seeing. And I say it over and over all day long. And I tell people, I say, visualize your cabinets. Shut your eyes right now and visualize your cabinets, your cupboards, whatever you got. I got cabinets. I don't have big cupboards. And your freezer and your refrigerator. If it's full of bags, boxes, cans, tubes, rolls, it's man-made food. And you're killing yourself. And I get it. You can't bag it all up and throw it all out. But as you run out of it, don't bring it back in.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So we're not raised with this. I wasn't raised this way.
No.
Were you? I don't even know how old you are, but
I think we're similar ages.
Huh?
We're similar ages.
Okay. Well, I'm 53 and I was raised eating Pop-Tarts, Captain Crunch, frozen pizza, Sonic. Chick-fil-A wasn't around yet, but I ate all that. I grew up eating Arby's. Arby's was there, and I ate Arby's roast beef like there was no tomorrow. I'm sure Arby's is fine, but it nearly killed me. So, especially when I was pregnant, that's all I ate was Arby's roast beef and Dr. Pepper. What? I hadn't had a Dr. Pepper in 10 years probably. And yes, and we wonder why we're sick.
And we wonder why. And we wonder why.
This is not rocket science.
No.
I mean, it's really not. Garbage in equals garbage out. You figured it out. It took you 6 years to write this book.
Yeah,
so here's what I'm telling you guys. It's not going to take you 6 years to reverse your autoimmune disease or whatever you have going on, because she put all the work into it. Buy the book, number one. Go order it on Amazon or wherever. Go to Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, and listen to what she's saying, because she is part of who we are. You guys that are in my tribe, this woman is preaching exactly what I teach you guys every single week.
Yeah, well, it's just beautiful how it comes together. And I think part of the problem with the foods is that, and maybe you see this all the time, people find it really hard to understand the connection between what they're eating and their joint pain, for example. Right? I mean, like, how in the world is that possible? Because it doesn't seem like it goes together, right? So I write in the book this thing on inflammation, how it's really our gut, which is like Grand Central Station for inflammation.
Yes.
Spreads throughout the body.
The entire body. The brain, the joints, everything.
Everything. And I've heard it talked about recently, a couple things on gluten, and I'm sorry to stay on it, but I think it's super important that people understand this, that it actually seems to affect the brain more than any other organ. And we don't want to lose that, a really important one. Gluten research came out recently that shows that it creates a leaky gut in anyone who eats it. So I hate sometimes that I'm the bearer of bad news, but I'm just giving this to people so that you can make your own decision. If you have an autoimmune condition, you continue to eat gluten, you're going to be perpetuating a leaky gut. We know that leaky gut is the pathway to autoimmune conditions. So the best thing you can do is take it out of your diet for 30 days. And if you want to add it back, you might not want to add it back because you may feel so good at the end of 30 days. I have clients that don't want to add it back in again. It's like, why would I do that? But sometimes you need to be in enough pain.
You bet. That's the thing. So I was waiting for you to say that, because tell them, add it back in, man. Add it. Go eat it. Go do whatever. Go to Chick-fil-A. Go do whatever it is you need to eat. And then I guarantee you within 3 hours to 3 days, if your head's blowing off your shoulders or your joints are killing you or your stomach is in a mess, then that is a food sensitivity. And they are delayed. And many people don't realize that food sensitivities are delayed. And so if you've got a joint pain today, it could be something you ate at 5 o'clock for dinner.
Yeah.
Or maybe something you ate Friday night.
Right.
Because tonight's Sunday.
Right.
Yeah. So I do have them try it back, put it back in, but it's unbelievable how much better you feel when you finally cut it out and you say, I'm done. I'm never going back to feeling like that again. Right. I'm not going back to laying on the couch again. Palmer, you're saying I'm not going back to laying on the couch again. I'm not going back to where you can't feel anything above the nipple line. What? So my best friend, since I was a little kid, has multiple sclerosis. And I think she's watching tonight. I'm not sure if she is or not. She's in Utah. She called me 6 years ago, about 6 years ago, maybe 7 years ago. She said, Dani, on her birthday, she said, my big toe is numb. And she woke up with a big toe numb. And I said, well, you've either got a B12 deficiency or you have multiple sclerosis. I was joking.
Right.
Well, come to find out she had multiple sclerosis. She was numb all the way up to the waist. She walked out of her house shoes twice. It's not funny. Never knew it. Left her house shoes behind and was totally bare feet.
I get it.
Can never feel it.
Never feel it.
She's making changes now, and she's also getting ready to have breast implants removed, which is going to be huge for her. Yeah.
I see that quite a bit.
You bet. Okay. Final thought. Can you believe this? We've been going for an hour. Give us some final thoughts. Give us some tips, some tricks, something that you have to say, something that's, what do you have to say?
So I will come back to the point about healing being multifactorial. I think it's really important that people understand that this is not a one and done kind of thing. This is really going to cause you to dig deep and to explore things in your own life. And I would just invite you to consider the question that I was asked that I got really offended about, and I hope not to offend anyone, but to ask the question, if you're dealing with something inflammatory, or you've got symptoms, you haven't figured it out, or you've been diagnosed with something, why do you think you got that whatever, or those whatever, right? I'm not doing that to be insensitive.
No.
I'm doing that as a question because we must dig into our root causes in order to heal, right? So the invitation, I think, and it's funny because I have my water in this cup, which is my wake up cup. Everybody that I interviewed for the book told me that they viewed their illness, their autoimmune condition, as a gift. It was an opportunity for them to wake up to who they truly are. And in the stress chapter, we didn't dig into stress. It's a meaty chapter. We talk about autoimmune personalities. We go into Gabor Mate and his discussion around different personality types that are autoimmune. And we see frequently that people, in particular women with autoimmune conditions, because it's 75% a women's issue, are things that have to do with personalities that we've taken on from childhood, the perfectionist, the overachiever, things of that nature, the caregiver. And we put everybody else first except ourselves. And in that process, we lose who we truly are. We don't know who we truly are. So we can view our gifts, and this is what everybody, the dozen practitioners that I've interviewed for the book and in my own experience, it's an opportunity to wake up to who we truly are. And the faster we can find the gift within the illness, right? The faster that we can find that, to shortcut the pain and be grateful for whatever it is that we have in our lives.
That's
the faster we get out of the muck and live our best life. I mean, it's really, I think that's what it comes down to for me.
And you know what? You and I quite possibly have, and many people watching this, because I see who's watching, have more years behind us than we do in front of us. And by gosh, I'm not going back to living like I did for 40 something years. I'm not going to do it ever again. And when you realize that, and I'm not going back, I'm going to live my best life. And what does that mean? What does that mean for you? It could mean a million things. You quit your job. You find a new job.
I did.
You get out of the stressful household you're in. And I'm not an advocate of divorce, but that may be what you need to do, because that person may be killing you.
Right.
You cut ties with people who are hurting you, who are causing you stress. I mean, there are a million different things that you could do, right? Or you have to eat well, sleep well, move well, poop well, decrease stress, and you have to cultivate community. Huge. And it's different for everyone, but you have to be curious and you have to look at it too. And I love that. That was the best part, not the best part, but a huge aha moment for me in this book was, why did you get that? Because I never thought, I mean, I've thought back about why I have lupus many times, but I mean, that's a huge question. I don't ask people that. And I'm going to start asking my patients that. Thank you for that.
I have that in my intake form, which is long, but it really gets into, I really want people to get quiet and allow things to come up. And sometimes it's going for a walk and not with your iPhone, the big distractions, but really getting quiet and just allowing your intuition to come forward, I find that's when that small voice, these are messages from our body. This is an invitation, right?
You bet. Listen to the little foxes that pop up and the little red flags. It's just like your spouse or your children and your friends. They all tell you what they need.
Right.
Now, if you don't choose not to listen, that's on you. But trust me, your spouse is telling you what he needs. Am I right? I don't have a spouse, but I remember. Am I right?
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
If you choose to ignore it, then you're going to get in problems. That's when you're going to get in the weeds, and that marriage is going to go like this, or that relationship or that job or what have you with your kids. It's the same with your health. It's telling you that inflammation, that joint pain in your hands, that diarrhea before you get finished with a meal. Well, not before you get finished with a meal, but that's terrible. But I mean, while you're eating and you have to go to the bathroom, right? Those migraine headaches, that bloating, that gas, that heartburn, Those are red flags.
That's
and
right.
they're telling you that something's wrong. You weren't born sick.
No.
And you don't have to stay sick. And you're not multiple sclerosis, Palmer.
No.
I'm not lupus,
No.
Dani. You're not Hashimoto's so-and-so. I mean, you're not Crohn's disease or celiac disease. You are not your disease. And I'm telling you, you can take your health back. And we purposely did not talk about supplements tonight because Palmer believes the same way I do. You need some supplements, but that's not the problem. It's not a supplement deficiency, right? You can't out supplement a bad diet or too much stress or, whatever, lack of exercise. You have to move your body. So I thank you. We could talk for hours, and we already have been talking for an hour, but guys, show this woman some love. Now, I want to know, how are people going to get in touch with you? What do they need to do? What kind of platform do you have out there? What do you have? Where do you want people to go?
Let me start with this. The biggest question I get from people all the time is, what do I eat when I have an autoimmune condition? So if you go to palmerkippola.com, so Palmer, KIPPOLA.com/gift, I have an optimal food guide, and that is an ebook that can help you figure out the right foods for you. So that will be something that I think would be very beneficial as a start. And this Transcend Autoimmune Facebook group, if people want support, it's exclusively for people that are seeking healing and community and support with autoimmune conditions. We do not discuss medication. That is a forbidden topic in the group. It's really to help each other. It's a supportive community. That would be a great way and place to connect.
So can providers join that? Or do you try to keep providers out of there? Because I totally understand that.
Yeah, it's more for people who are seeking healing. I've actually had some situations with practitioners. So it's lovely practitioners.
Well, I keep my mouth shut.
Very welcome.
I belong to many groups like that, and I just keep my mouth shut. I just learn and listen. I don't say a word on there because I also have autoimmune disease.
There you go.
And
I love it. And I'm in yours.
Transcend autoimmunity. So that's different than the Palmer. What?
Transcend autoimmune. Yep.
Is that different than the Palmer Kippola page?
Yes. So I have a Facebook page is Palmer Kippola. I know it's confusing. I don't do that much social media. It would just drive me crazy. So I don't do anything on Twitter. But yes.
What about Instagram? Do you have an Instagram?
Palmer.Kippola.
Yeah. I know you do because I tagged you. But anyway, Palmer Kippola.com or is that / gift. Go there, guys. Transcend autoimmunity.
Autoimmune. No.
Autoimmune.
Transcend autoimmune.
Ask to join that for those of you that have autoimmune disease. I am telling you, run, don't walk. Your phone and buy this book. I am amazed and thrilled. I've been wanting to write a book for years, and she wrote the book that I've been wanting to write. So now I got to come up with something else. But I'm telling you, this book is amazing. This will be your autoimmune Bible. No joke. And I don't say that lightly. The people who know me know I don't blow smoke up anybody. So
well, that's why we love you.
That's why I love you. And I can't wait to see you in August in San Bernardino. Where are we going? Rancho Bernardo.
Rancho Bernardo.
Oh, it's going to be great for the conference. But guys, I appreciate you all so much. Thank you, Palmer.
Thank you, Dani,
for being on here. Guys, we will not have Sunday night service next week because it's Memorial Day. So be with your friends, be with your people. And then the next week I will be in Black Mountain, North Carolina at the Medicines from the Earth Herbal Medicine Conference. I go every year. It is one of my all-time favorite conferences. And Dr. Deering and I are going to be there together. You know, he's we're not together. He's going separately and I'm going separately, but we're going to be there and maybe we're going to do Sunday night service. Yeah. His wife would not like that I don't mean that. In fact, I've been to that conference about 5 years total over the last eight years. And I had no idea that Dr. Deering goes every year. I had no clue. Of course, I didn't know until last year, but I'm going to see if he'll do a Sunday night service with us. We'll be talking about all the herbal medicine we're studying about, but go read the book. Thank you, Palmer. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I love this.
Well, I'm telling you, everybody on here, you can't see this, but everybody is talking about thank you both. Thank you. Oh my gosh, great information. Thank you both. Very informative, all the things. You can read this whenever. And guys, when we log off here, you all can share this to your communities and tag Palmer for darn sure. I mean, you can tag me too, but tag her because her word needs to get out.
Thank you.
All right. Appreciate you, sis. I'm going to end this. Don't go anywhere. Okay. All right, guys. Have a fabulous week. Tonight is Sunday night. Tomorrow, that means is Monday morning, right? Most heart attacks happen on Sunday night, for crying out loud. So calm down, breathe, do a little stretching, some yoga, take a bath, take a shower, whatever you need to do. Get your head right, because many people don't wake up tomorrow morning. And if you wake up on Monday morning, you count yourself as blessed and make it an amazing week, because lots of people don't get that far. Am I right? They don't wake up. That's why I tell people about menopause. You need to be grateful and you need to thank God for every hot flash, because there's lots of women who did not make it through menopause, right? I'm going through it, so I can speak from experience. All right, guys, we'll see you in a couple weeks.